Welcome back. We are going to continue on with Ben Cody's treasure today. Um, Remember, as you listen, you're thinking about what you wonder. At the end, you will respond in Canvas with two things that you wonder from today's text. Toby and Leo climbed into the car and headed down the street. First stop, the river, right? Toby said. Leo shook his head. First stop, City Hall, he corrected. We have to copy a map from that time period. Then we can compare the old map with a map of the city the way it is today. That will help us figure out what landmarks have changed. An hour later, Toby was holding the two maps and copies of all the news stories about Ben Cody. I guess we start at the bank, she said in a doubtful voice. The newspaper just called it the Lakewood Bank, but now we have so many. Back in Ben Cody's day, there were only two banks in town, Leo chimed in. Besides the Lakewood Bank, there was a bank called Cattleman's Savings. Toby looked at her brother in surprise. How do you know that? Leo looked smug. Research. He pulled into the parking lot of the downtown Lakewood Bank. How did you know which branch? Toby started to say, but she interrupted herself. Never mind, I know. Research. And logic, Leo added. This is the location of the original Lakewood Bank. As the town grew, other branches were added, but the one Ben Cody robbed had to have been right here. They climbed out of the car. Try to imagine what this part of town would have looked like back then, Leo said as they checked the maps. Smaller, Toby said as she looked around. Not so much asphalt, not so many people. I bet old Ben went straight to the river from here. Wouldn't you guess that he followed River Street? I sure would, Leo said, pointing to the old map. All these other streets weren't here then. Let's go. In just a few minutes, they pulled into a parking lot near the river. Oh, wow, Toby said as she scanned the old map. There wasn't a park by the river in Ben's day. There was no parking lot either, Leo said, but those oak trees down by the riverbank were here. Look, he handed Toby a photocopy of an old news article. Just above the story was a photograph of the flooded river. Those trees were tiny then, Toby cried. Then suddenly her shoulders slumped. This is crazy, she grumbled as she looked around. The area is too big. The money could be anywhere. Why don't we follow Ben's trail back into town? Leo said. Let's try to figure out what Ben saw when he doubled back. He started the car and backed up. Which way did Ben go? Leo asked. Checking both maps, Toby directed him. Along the way, they passed subdivisions filled with new houses, schools, parks, and shopping centers. How can we be sure? Everything has changed, Toby exclaimed. There aren't any familiar landmarks. Leo ignored her outburst. Try to put yourself in Ben's shoes, he said. It was dark and it was raining. Ben wouldn't have been able to see any landmarks. How would he know where to find it again? No, my guess is that he wanted to get warm and dry as soon as possible. So where do you think he went when he got back into town? Good question, Leo said. I wonder if the tour guide at the Lakewood Crime Museum would have any ideas. The what? Leo grinned at his sister. The Lakewood Crime Museum opened up last year. Evidence from old Lakewood crimes are displayed there. They exhibit things like weapons and blackmail notes and wanted man posters. There's a cop on duty at the museum who gives tours and answers questions. It's really a great place to do. I know, Toby interrupted with a little smile. Research. Who knows? They might have information about Ben Cody that was never given to the newspaper, Leo said. Toby looked hopeful. Let's go. The Lakewood Crime Museum was in a wing of the police station. The officer in charge was a grizzled old sergeant who looked as if he was ready for retirement. After Leo told the man about his sister's term paper, the sergeant leaned back in his chair and chuckled. Boy, you two picked a good subject, he said. Old Ben Cody, huh? Yeah, I remember hearing stories about him. Toby's eyes widened. Did you ever meet him? She asked. The sergeant almost choked. Miss, when Ben Cody died, I wasn't even born. No, ma'am, I never met the old guy. But I remember my father and my uncle talking about Ben Cody and about his so-called treasure, of course. Your father and uncle were cops too? Toby asked. Cool. I bet you have enough stories to fill a book. The sergeant nodded. Yeah, I sure do. And it just so happens that my grandfather was one of the cops who caught Cody. The sergeant gazed off into space as he recalled the stories he'd heard. Leo and Toby let him talk. Now and then they'd ask questions, but mostly they just listened. What do you suppose happened to the money? Toby asked. Oh, it washed away for sure, the sergeant said. We found a handful of bills stuck in the mud next to the bridge, but there was no sign of the rest of it. What did Ben say when he was told the money was gone? Toby asked. They said he just laughed, the sergeant said. He shook his head. I think the old man was crazy. Right up to the end, he was talking about retiring in comfort after he got out of prison. Sounds like he knew something no one else did, Leo remarked. The sergeant laughed. Cody always said the clues were right under our noses, but we missed all of them. Now, why would he say that? Toby wondered aloud. Just to be annoying, the sergeant remarked, and he certainly was that. Why do you suppose Cody came back to town that night? Leo asked, and why did he hide in the basement of the police station? The sergeant shrugged. That wasn't such a bad idea. Folks say that the best place to hide something is in plain view. You know, hide things where no one is likely to look. The cops would hardly have thought of looking in their own basement for an escaping robber. Leo nodded. That's true. Thanks, Sergeant. You've been a big help. Toby was ready to explode, but she kept quiet until they got into the car. Then she sputtered, This is just a wild goose chase after all. Let's give it up, Leo. There is no loot. We've wasted a whole day already. Leo burst out laughing. Unable to control himself, he pounded the steering wheel. He laughed so hard that tears rolled down his cheeks. Toby stared at her brother. Have you lost your mind? She scolded. This is not a bit funny, Leo. Oh, yes, it is, Leo said, wiping his eyes. Don't you see? Ben Cody did indeed have the last laugh, Toby. Toby's eyes narrowed. Okay, Mr. Detective, how about sharing your brilliant insights with your sister? Leo took a deep breath. Let's try to sort out the guesses and the facts. Ben Cody robbed the bank and escaped to the river. Fact or guess? Fact, Toby said. Then he dug a bunch of holes near the bridge. Fact. He buried the money by the bridge. Fact, Toby started to say, but Leo shook his head. No, that's just a guess, Toby. They found holes and a few loose bills, but no sign of the money bags. Toby frowned. Okay, so what does all of that mean? And that's where we're going to stop today. Think about what you wonder from listening today and go over to Canvas and write your 2 questions in Canvas. We will finish up the story tomorrow. Thank you.